So, when I last read, the Nightmen had come to the Logans' home in the middle of the night, and Cassie and the boys um, have been pretty much blaming themselves because they feel that the bus driver somehow figured out what they did, so they feel like it was their fault. And we ended with them going to bed. So, chapter 4 starts now. Cassie, what's the matter with you, girl? Big Ma asked as she thrust 3 sticks of dried pine into the stove to rekindle the dying morning fire. You sure are taking a softly long time to churn that butter. Nothing, I muttered. Nothing? Big Ma turned and looked directly at me. You've been moping round here for the past week like you got the whooping cough, flu, and measles all put together. I sighed deeply and continued to churn. Big Ma reached out and felt my forehead, then my cheeks. Frowning, she pulled her hand away as Mamma entered the kitchen. Mary, feel this child's face, she said. She seem warm to you. Mamma cupped my face in her thin hands. You feel sick, Cassie? No, Mum. How do you feel? All right, I said, still churning. Mamma studied me with the same disturbed look Big Ma wore, and a tiny frown line appeared on her brow. Cassie, she said softly, fixing her dark eyes upon me, is there something you want to tell me? I was on the verge of blurting out the whole awful truth about the bus and the men in the night. And then I remembered the pact Stacy had made us swear to when I told him, Christopher John, and Little Man about the caravan. Then I said instead, no, ma'am, and began to churn again. Abruptly, Mamma took hold of the churning stick, her eyes searching mine as she studied me. She seemed about to ask me something. Then the question faded and she pulled away, lifting the lid of the churn. It looks ready now, she said with a sigh. Dip out the butter like I showed you and wash it down. I'll take care of the milk. I scooped the butter from the churning lid onto a plate and went through the curtain to the small pantry off the kitchen to get the molding dish. It had been placed on a high shelf under several other dishes, and I had to stand on a stool to get it. As I eased it out, Mama and Big Ma spoke softly in worried tones on the other side of the curtain. Something's the matter with that child, Mary. She's not sick, Mama. There's all sorts of sickness. She ain't been right going on over a week. She ain't sleeping right neither, restless and murmuring all night long. And she won't hardly even go out to play, rather be in here helping us. Now, you know that ain't like that child. There was a moment's pause, then Mamma whispered so I could hardly hear her. You think, Mamma, you think she could have seen me? Oh, Lord, no, child, Big Ma exclaimed hastily. I checked in there right after they passed, and she was sound asleep. She couldn't have seen them old devils. The boys, neither. Mamma sighed. The boys, they're not themselves either. All of them, too quiet. Here it is Saturday morning, and they're quiet as church mice. I don't like it, and I can't shake the feeling it's got something to do with Cassie. Without warning, I lost my balance and, with an absurd topple from the knee-high stool, crashed upon the floor with the molding dish. Cassie, you hurt? Mama asked, stooping beside me. No, Mom, I mumbled, feeling very clumsy and close to tears. I knew that if I let the tears fall, Mama's suspicion that something was wrong would be confirmed, for I never cried about such a silly thing as a fall. In fact, I seldom ever cried. So instead of crying, I jumped up quickly and began to pick up the broken pieces of the dish. Sorry, Mama. That's all right, she said, helping me. When we had swept the chips away with the long field straw broom, she told me, leave the butter, Cassie, and go on in with the boys. But, Mama, I'll do the butter. Now go on, do like I say. I stared up at Mama, wondering if she would ever know what we had done. Then joined the boys, who were sitting listlessly around the fire, absently listening to TJ. See, fellas, there's a system to getting out of work, TJ was expounding as I sat down. Just don't be around when it's got to be done. Only thing is, you can't let your folks know what you're doing. See, you should do like me. Like this morning, when Mama wanted to bring back them scissors she borrowed from Miss Logan, I offered some volunteers so she don't have to make this long trip down here, she being so busy and all. And naturally, when I got here, y'all wanted me to stay a while to talk to y'all. So what could I do? I couldn't be impolite, could I? And by the time I finally convinced y'all I gotta go, all the work be done at home. TJ chuckled with satisfaction. Yep, you just have to use the old brain, that's all. He was quiet a moment, expecting some comment on his discourse, but no one said a word. TJ's eyes roamed the length of the floor. Then he admonished, See, if you was smart like me, Stacy, you'd use that old brain to get the questions on that big test coming up. Just think, they probably just sitting right here in this very room, waiting to be discovered. Stacy cast TJ an annoyed look, but did not speak. Y'all sure are sorry lot this morning, TJ observed. A fella's just wasting his know-how talking to y'all. Ain't nobody asked you to give it, said Stacy. Well, you don't have to get snippety about it, replied TJ haughtily. Again, silence prevailed, but that would not do for TJ. Say, how about we sneak down to that old Wallace store and learn how to do them new dances? Mama told us not to go down there, Stacy said. You some mama's boy or something? You gotta do everything your mama tells. You go on if you want to, said Stacy quietly, not rising to TJ's bait, but we stay in here. Again, silence. Then TJ said, Say, y'all hear the latest about them nightmen? Suddenly, all eyes turned from the fire and riveted themselves upon him. Our faces were eager question marks. We were totally in TJ's power. There's a metaphor. Our faces were eager question marks. I like that. What about them? Stacy asked, almost evenly. TJ, of course, intended to nurse the moment for as long as he could. You see, when a fella's as smart as me, he gets to know things that other folks don't. Now, this kind of information ain't for the ears of little kids, so I really shouldn't even be telling y'all. Then don't, said Stacy with smooth finality, turning back toward the fire as if he cared not at all about the nightmen. Taking his cue, I nudged Christopher John, and Christopher John nudged Little Man. Three of us forced ourselves to stare into the fire and feign disinterest. Without a captive audience, TJ had to reinterest us by getting to the point. Well, about a week ago, they rode down to Mr. Sam Tatum's place, down the Jackson Road to a Strawberry, and you know what they done? Stacy, Little Man, and I kept our eyes on the fire, but Christopher John piped eagerly, What? I poked Christopher John, and he turned guiltily around. But TJ, triumphant within a short audience of one, settled back in his chair, ready to prolong the suspense. You know, Mama killed me if she knowed I was telling y'all this. I heard her and Miss Claire Thompson talking about it. They was real scared. Don't know why, though. Them old nightmares sure wouldn't scare me none. Like I told Claude, hey, y'all, Stacy said, standing and motioning us up. Mama said she wanted us to take some milk and butter down to Miss Jackson before noon. We better get started. I nodded, and Christopher John, Little Man, and I got up. Tarred and feathered 'em, TJ announced hastily. Poured the blackest tar they could find all over him. Then plastered him with chicken feathers. TJ laughed. Can you imagine that? I just have to stop. That is so telling, the fact that he's laughing telling this story about how a human was tarred. When you think about tar, it's hot, sticky, black, almost like a glue. And poured that all over their bodies. And TJ's laughing. Mind you, TJ is black. TJ is, he comes from a sharecropping family that works for Mr. Granger. That's what they said earlier in the story. His father is Mr. Avery. He's the one who came over to warn about the nightmen coming. And this is how TJ's reacting. So what does this tell us about TJ? But why? Asked Little Man, forgetting our ploy. This time, TJ did not slow down. I don't know if y'all's little ears should be hearing this, but it seems he called Mr. Jim Lee Barnett a liar. He's the man who worked the mercantile down in Strawberry. Mr. Tatum's supposed to done told him that he ain't ordered up all them things Mr. Barnett done charged him for. Mr. Barnett said he had all them things Mr. Tatum wrote down. And when Mr. Tatum asked to see the list of his, Mr. Barnett said, "You calling me a lie, boy?" And Mr. Tatum says, "Yes, sir, I guess I is." That done it. Then it wasn't 'cause of the bus? Christopher John blurted out. Bus? What a bus got to do with it? Nothing, said Stacy quickly. Nothing at all. Well, if anybody said that them night men was down in here because of some stupid bus, they crazy, TJ said authoritatively. Because my information come direct from Miss Claire Thompson, who seen Mr. Tatum herself. You sure? Stacy asked. Sure? Sure, I'm sure. When do I ever say anything when I ain't sure? Stacy smiled with relief. Come on, let's go get that milk. All of us went into the kitchen, then to the bedrooms to get our coats. When we got outside, TJ remembered that he had left his cap by the fire and ran back to retrieve it. As soon as we were alone, Little Man asked, Stacy, you really think them night men put tar and feathers all over Mr. Tatum? I suppose so, said Stacy. Little Man frowned, but it was Christopher John who spoke up, whispering shrilly as if the stray morning ghost might overhear. If they ever find out about the bus, you think they gonna put tar and feathers all over us? Little Man's frown deepened, and he observed gravely, if they did, we'd never get clean again. Cassie, said Christopher John, his eyes wide, was you scared when you seen him? Little Man shivered with excitement. I wish I could have seen him. Well, I don't, declared Christopher John. In fact, I wish I'd never heard of no nightmen or buses or secret holes in the road. And with that outburst, he stuffed his pudgy hands into his thin jacket, pressed his lips firmly together, and refused to say a word. After a few moments, Stacy said, What's keeping TJ? The rest of us shrugged, then followed Stacy back up to the porch into Mama's room. As we entered, TJ jumped. He was standing at the desk with Mama's W.E.B. Du Bois, a Negro, in his hands. That don't look like your cap, said Stacy. Oh, man, I ain't done nothing. Just looking at Miss Logan's history book, that's all. I'm mighty interested in that place called Egypt she be telling us about and them black kings that ruled back then. Still talking, he casually put down the book and picked up his cap. All four of us looked accusingly at TJ, and he halted. Say, what is this? What's the meaning of sneaking it up on me like that anyway? Y'all think I was looking for them test questions or something? Shoot, a fella think you didn't trust him. Then thrusting his arms around Stacy's shoulder, he chatted, Friends gotta trust each other, Stacy, 'cause ain't nothing like a true friend. And with those words of wisdom, he left the room, leaving us to wonder how he had managed to slink out of this one. The Monday, now I'm going to take a breath. This is one of those section changes. There's more characterization, by the way, for TJ. There's so much we can say about TJ, and we're going to do it with a table chart. The Monday after his arrival, Mr. Morrison had moved into the deserted tenant shack that stood in the south pasture. It was a sorry mess, that house. Its door hung sadly from a broken hinge, its porch floorboards were rotted, and its one-room interior was densely occupied by rats, spiders, and other field creatures. But Mr. Morrison was a quiet man, almost shy, and although Mama had offered him lodging in our house, he preferred the old shack. Mama sensed that Mr. Morrison was a private person, and she did not object to the move, but she did send the boys and me to the house to clean it up. Little Man, Christopher John, and I took to Mr. Morrison immediately and had no objections to cleaning. Anybody who was a friend of Papa's was all right in our books. Besides, When he was near, nightmen and burn-ins and midnight torrents faded into a hazy distance. But Stacy remained aloof and had little to do with him. So if he had little to do with him, then aloof probably means stays away, standoffish, not warm. After the cleaning, I asked Mama if Christopher John, Little Man, and I could go visit Mr. Morrison, but she said no. But Mama, I want to know more about him, I explained. I just want to know how come he's so big. You know as much as you need to know, she decided. And as long as Mr. Morrison stays here, that's his house. If he wants you down there, he'll ask you. Don't know how come. I need to pause. You know about as much as you need to know, she decided. I'm rereading because I had to stop for a second. As long as Mr. Morrison stays here, that's his house. If he wants you down there, he'll ask you. Don't know how come y'all want to go down there? No way, Stacy said moodily when Mama was out of hearing. 'Cause we like him, that's why, I answered, tired of his distant attitude toward Mr. Morrison. Then, as discreetly as I could, I said, "What's the matter with you, boy, not liking Mr. Morrison?" Stacy shrugged. I like him all right. Don't act that way. Stacy looked away from me. Don't need him here. All that work he's doing, I could have done it myself. Oh, you could not have. You could have done no such thing. Besides, I looked around to be certain Big Mama were not within hearing. Besides, Papa didn't just bring him here to do work. You know how come he's really here. Stacy turned toward me haughtily. I could have taken care of that, too. I rolled my eyes at him, but held my peace. I didn't feel like a fight, and as long as Mr. Morrison was within hollering distance of the back porch, it made little difference to me what Stacy thought he could do. I sure wouldn't want that big old man staying in my place, said TJ on the way home from school. I bet you he'd get mad one time. He'd take old Little Man and swing him over that tree yonder like he wasn't nothing but a twig. He laughed. Then, as Little Man set his lips and stared angrily up, of course, I could probably do that by myself. Couldn't neither, denied Little Man. Hush, man, said Stacy. TJ, leave man alone. Oh, I ain't bothering him. Little Man's my buddy, ain't you, man? Little Man scowled but didn't reply. TJ turned back to Stacy. You ready for that history test? Hope so, said Stacy, but I keep forgetting them dates. Betcha I could help you if you be nice. How? You worse than I am about dates. TJ grinned, then slowly pulled a folded sheet of paper from his pocket and handed it to Stacy. Stacy unfolded it, looked at it curiously, and then frowned. You're planning on cheating? Well, nah, I ain't planning on it, said TJ seriously, just if I gotta. Well, you ain't gonna, said Stacy, tearing the paper in two. Hey, what's the matter with you, man? Cried TJ, grabbing for the paper, but Stacy turned his back to him and tore that paper into bits and deposited them into the gully. Man, that ain't right. I wouldn't do you that way. Maybe not, replied Stacy, but at least this way you won't get into no trouble. TJ mumbled, if failing ain't trouble, I don't know what is. And you guys will probably notice if you're reading along as I do that the punctuation isn't always correct and sometimes the words aren't correct because this was a voice to text type of thing. So it's almost like I'm trying to use it almost like what you would do with the TV when you have, I forget what it's called, but when the words come up on the screen, closed captioning. So it's almost like captioning. I'm reading, but I also want the words to kind of be there for you as well. But it gets a little bit tricky with the text to speech, and it's a lot to try and edit. But that would be a fun activity if you wanted to do it on your own. No. Okay. I wouldn't do you that way. Maybe not, replied Stacy, but at least this way you won't get into no trouble. TJ mumbled, if failing ain't trouble, I don't know what is. Sorry. Little Man, Christopher John, Claude, and I were sitting on the bottom step of the 7th grade class building after school waiting for Stacy and TJ when the front door banged open and TJ shot out and tore across the yard. What's the matter with him? asked Christopher John. Ain't he gonna wait for Stacy? The rest of the seventh grade, led by little Willie Wiggins and Mo, came out. Mo Turner spilled from the building. There you go, cried little Willie as TJ disappeared on the forest road. Mo Turner yelled, let's see where he's going. Then he and three other boys dashed away in pursuit of TJ, but the others stood restlessly near the steps as if school had not yet ended. Hey, what's going on? I asked little Willie. What's everybody waiting around for? And where's Stacy? Demanded little man. Little Willie smiled. Stacy inside with Miss Logan. He got whipped today. Whipped? I cried. Why, can't nobody whip Stacy. Who done it? Your mama, laughed little Willie. Mama? Christopher John, little man, and I exclaimed. Little Willie nodded. Yup, front of everybody. I swallowed hard, feeling very sorry for my older brother. It was bad enough to be whipped in front of 30 others by a teacher, but to get it by one's own mother, now that was downright embarrassing. Why'd Mama do that? Asked Christopher John. She caught him with cheat notes during the history examination. Mama knows Stacy wouldn't cheat, I declared. Little Willie shrugged. Well, whether she knowed it or not, she sure enough whooped him. Of course, now she gave him a chance to get out of it, say he wasn't cheating. And she asked him how he got them cheat notes, but Stacy wouldn't tell on old TJ, and you know good and well TJ wasn't about to say them notes was his. Cheat notes? But how'd TJ get cheat notes? Stacy got rid of them this morning. Come noontime, though, replied little Willie. TJ was in them woods busy writing himself another set. Me and Mo seen him. Well, what the devil was Stacy doing with them? Well, we was in the middle of the examination, and old TJ slips out these cheat notes, and me and Clarence here was sitting right behind him and TJ and seeing the whole thing. Stacy was sitting right side of TJ, and when he seen them notes, he motioned TJ to put them away. At first, TJ wouldn't do that. I don't know where I left off, and I don't want to miss this. At first, TJ wouldn't do it. But then he seen Ms. Logan starting toward him and slipped Stacy there. Okay, so I already read that. But knowing Stacy, I bet you old TJ ain't gonna get away with it, chuckled little Willie. And TJ know it too. That's why he lit out here like he done. I betcha. Hey, Stacy! Everyone turned. Stacy bounded down the steps. His square face was unsmiling, but there was no anger in his voice when he said quietly, anybody seen TJ? All the students answered at once, indicating TJ had headed west toward home, then surrounded Stacy as he started across the lawn. Christopher John, little man Claude, and I followed. When we reached the crossroads, Mo Turner was waiting. TJ went down to the Wallace store, he announced. Stacy stopped, and so did everyone else. Stacy stared past Jefferson Davis and back down the road toward Great Faith. Looking over his shoulder, he found me and ordered, Cassie, you and Christopher John and Man go on home. You come too, I said, afraid of where he was going. Got something to take care of first, he said, walking away. Mama gonna take care of you too, I hollered after him. You know she said we're not supposed to go down there. She find out, she gonna wear you out again. Papa too. But Stacy didn't come back. For a moment, little man Christopher John Claude and I stood watching Stacy and the others heading swiftly northward. Then little man said, I want to see what he gonna do. I don't, declared Christopher John. Come on, I said, starting after Stacy with little man and Claude beside me. I don't want no whipping, objected Christopher John, standing alone in the crossroads. But when he saw that we were not coming back, he puffed to join us, grumbling all the while. The Wallace store stood almost a half a mile beyond Jefferson Davis, on a triangular lot that faced the Soldiers Bridge crossroads. Once the Granger Plantation store, it had been run by the Wallaces for as long as I could remember. And most of the people within the 40-mile stretch between Smellens Creek and Strawberry shopped there. The other three corners of the crossroads were forest land, black and dense. The store consisted of a small building with a gas pump in front and a storage house in back. Beyond the store, against the forest edge, were two gray clapboard houses and a small garden. But there were no fields. The Wallaces did not farm. Stacy and the other students were standing in the doorway of the store when little man Christopher John Claude and I ran up. We squeezed through so we could see inside. A man we all knew was Caleb Wallace stood behind the counter. A few other men sat around the stove playing checkers, and Jeremy's older brothers, R.W. and Melvin, who had dropped out of school long ago, leaned sleepy-eyed against the counter, staring at us. "Y'all go on back," said Caleb Wallace. "Less'n y'all want to buy something." Mr. Dewberry got the music going already. As we turned away from the entrance, Melvin Sims said, "Just look at all them come to dance." And the laughter of the men filled the room. Christopher John tugged on my arm. "I don't like this place, Cassie. Let's go on home." "Can't leave without Stacy," I said. Music beckoned from the storage room where Dewberry Wallace was placing round brown bottles on a small table as we crowded in. Aside from the table, there was no furniture in the room. Boxes lined the walls, and the center floor had been cleared for dancing. Several older couples from Great Faith were already engaged in movements I had never seen before. "What are they doing?" asked Little Man. I shrugged. "I guess that's what they call dancing." "There you go!" someone shouted as the back door of the storeroom slammed shut. Stacy turned quickly and sped to the back of the building. TJ was fleeing straight toward Soldiers Road. Stacy tore across the Wallace yard and, leaping high